You don't memorize by reading a textbook. You don't memorize by highlighting these notes. The way that you would actually memorize is through paying attention and actually being focused in class, but also doing some kind of active recall method to actually strengthen that connection inside of your memory. These are the kind of methods that I've learned throughout high school and university, which has helped me get these kind of grades, like these kind of grades in my A-levels, but also helped me graduate high school 1 year early. So a lot of students may struggle with learning and, trying to memorize the content. They learn the content and it goes in one ear and it just goes out the other one, right? And I think a lot of it has to come down with presence and the attention span that a lot of people have. You, as a young person, probably have a very bad attention span. What have you been training yourself to do all this time, right? You've been doing this. You've been scrolling on your phone every single day. You come home, you've been on your phone for hours and hours and hours, right? I understand, we are a generation that's been basically raised on the internet. As sad as that sounds, I understand that your attention span may be kind of shit. It may be kind of bad. It's hard for you to focus because real life is way more boring compared to a stimulating phone or a very stimulating video game. And I understand it's hard to focus, but a lot of the time when I think that people complain that they don't actually learn anything in class, it's because they end up daydreaming and thinking about other things. Their mind wandering because of the fact that their attention span is so bad, because they can't seem to keep focused to actually listen to some of the content. If you had amazing focus and a great attention span, you'd be able to listen to it and actually properly, take some of it in, right? If you were quite interested in the topic, you would take it in gladly, right? Have you ever had that experience where you're trying to read a book, for example, where you read this book and you're going through the paragraph, your eyes are following the words, but you're actually mind wandering and thinking about something else. You're actually thinking about something that's not relevant. You're off over here, right? Where you're going through and through and through, but then you realize you actually haven't taken anything in. You actually haven't learned anything because you've been thinking about something else when you're supposed to be reading the book. That's what a lot of it feels like. That's what it feels like to basically not be present. So what we got to do is we got to increase our presence, our mindfulness, our ability to be present in this moment, and also to increase our attention span. To increase our attention span, what I would recommend you do is to go on a long-term dopamine detox. This is basically a long-term reduction of your screen time, where you'll start to replace these habits, these bad habits, you scrolling on your phone. You already know it's kind of bad for you. You playing a bunch of video games. It's not very good for you. You already intrinsically know that. So what we have to do is we start to replace it with better activities. You start to pick up new hobbies. You start to play sports, go to the gym, or, start to call your friends, start reading books. Start to replace some of that stimulating internet time with a more healthy way to enjoy your life, right? For example, where you go hang out with your friends more, you go outside, go for walks, go to the gym, go play some sports, something like that. Go read some books, something that's less stimulating than you being on a screen all day. Because you being on a screen, it's low-key affecting your mental health. It's affecting you. That on your screen all day and being stuck on your screen, scrolling all day, it's actually such a sign of depression as well. At the same time, it's shortening your attention span because you're training yourself with all this short form content. So what we have to do is we could take some breaks from the internet. After 8 p.m., you stop going on the internet, for example. Get some time to experience a bit of boredom and embrace boredom. Start to have this new mindset where you start to embrace boredom. And as you start to embrace boredom, class will become easier. It will be easier for you to focus. It will become easier for you to listen to what the teacher says. And so you'll be able to understand more. You'll be able to take in more naturally. Instead of having to go and reread the content or rewatch the lecture, you're going to be able to just take it in and just understand some important points from the first time. Along with reducing my screen time, another habit which has really improved my focus, my attention span, my mindfulness as well, has been meditation. This practice of meditation. I meditate every single day, and it's helped me increase my focus, and it helps me be more present as well. Where meditation is the practice of focusing. It is practicing focusing on something that's happening right now. Like your breath, for example. You'll sit there and you'll meditate and you'll try and focus on your breath. But slowly but surely your mind will wander away. And every time your mind wanders, all you have to do is just gently remind yourself to focus back on the breath. It's basically this phase of you breathing, you think about something else, and then you notice you think about something else, and you just drift yourself back into it. And then every time you do that, every time you refocus, you train that part of your brain, which helps boost your focus. Every time you do that, you become stronger and more mindful, and you become more present. And so this will lead to less daydreaming and less thinking about random shit, right? It will help you be able to focus better. It actually helps every aspect of my life, but especially in listening to people, in understanding what other people are saying, and listening in class, for example. It's helped me so much in terms of that. Meditation's been amazing for me. So I think something like a daily practice of meditation, like 5 minutes, or just following a guided meditation is so amazing for your focus. It'll help counteract some of that damage that the screen has done to you, that damage that the screen has done to your attention span. Seriously, I think it's helped to rewire my brain, and it's been so helpful for me. And so once you've actually learned this and you start to implement this will mean that you'll have to go over it less, and you'll start to absorb more information as well. If you're more present, your attention span is longer. But how do we actually memorize? Because of course, once you've learned it, you've got to start to reiterate it and actually start to memorize it a bit more for your test, for your final exam, for example. If you want to get good at memorization and really commit something to your memory, you have to understand this idea of passive versus active recall. Where you have a passive recall, right? This is basically what a lot of people do. They try and memorize by just rereading it over and over again. They try and read it from a textbook, from a question, for something like that. But that's without retrieving it from your memory. You retrieve it from this information source, like a text or something like that. But that's trying to retrieve it without looking through your own memory. But active recall is trying to test yourself, trying to retrieve it from your memory from before, right? And guess which one's more effective? You questioning yourself versus reading the textbook. I bet obviously it's this one. Because each time you question yourself and start to recall that memory, you recall that fact or that explanation that you had, that you remembered from before. Every time you recall that kind of neuron connection strengthens. It becomes stronger and becomes more obvious, and it starts to commit more to your memory. Each time you try and remember something, it'll become stronger because it becomes more important to you. The more you use it, the more you remember it, right? It's something simple as that. And it will feel a bit harder. Obviously, active recall is a bit harder, but that's the point. It's good, it's better for you. You can cope and pretend to do passive study. You can pretend to read the textbook when you're not even present and your mind wandering, and pretend that you're actually studying. But the only way that you can truly commit something to memory, I think, is if you actually use it and recall it. You apply these concepts. You use the concept in a question. You recall the concept by answering a past paper question, right? And so, for example, for physics, you see that you're doing an energy question, and so something is moving as well. And you can start to recall, what's that related to, right? What kind of equation is that related to? You start to think back to what you've done before. And slowly but surely, you realize that, it's kinetic energy. And so you write down half mv squared, right? And so the more you practice that, the more you'll just automatically do it. The more that you'll know that, it's just kinetic energy. You just write it out. It becomes second nature to you. I know a lot of this sounds very obvious, but sometimes you just need to be reminded and keep going on the right track. And I think this is probably the reason why I did well in my exams, is because of the fact that I only focused on these past paper questions. Honestly, you could just completely focus on that, and that will be the most bang for your buck. That will give you the highest rate of return if you just focus on those past paper questions. Another way that you can incorporate recall into your question, actively recalling, is for subjects like, English or biology, or maybe even physics, some definitions from physics, where, you have some very specific Cambridge A-level definitions that they really like. They really like this terminology for this kind of concept. And so you write that down into some digital flashcards. And you can just assess yourself and look through them. You create some flashcards and write out what's important and what do you think. What are some definitions that you think are going to show up. And so you can write down, velocity is equal to rate of change of displacement, for example. And from that, if you just look through each of these, it will start to remind yourself. Every single time you're a bit bored, you can just pull up your digital flashcard, and you can just remind yourself, this is right, I remember this. And each time that you reiterate it to your brain, the stronger the connection becomes. And so we just need to strengthen that connection so that we can memorize it and it becomes second nature to us. So meditation and reducing my screen time has improved my attention span, my focus, but also applying some of these active recall methods, using some past paper questions that help me apply knowledge that I've learned before, and using that to practice has been the most helpful for committing something to memory and actually starting to remember the things that I do learn, right? When you start to truly be able to do some questions, that's when you go from knowing how to do something to basically being able to apply it, to actually doing it, to being able to actually do it. Doing those past paper questions will be the most beneficial thing that will help you. Just quickly, if you're an A-level IGCSE student, have a look at the top link in the description below. It's a full course on how to improve and get those A stars that you've been dreaming of. Have a look at that in the top link in the description below. Thanks for watching, guys. See you later. Bye-bye.